What's up guys, this is Cher talking, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I bring you news for Romancing SaGa UniverSe. They just announced the last prefecture banner that is related to the anniversary celebration from JP. It's the SaGa Sinstrel's Romancing Festival that adds 3 new styles in the game, and they are all boss units: Alosis, Forneus, and Honus. All of them come from Romancing SaGa 3, and they were buffed, of course. We'll be talking about these buffs in a few. There's also a new event. This is called Romancing SaGa Legacy Panels, and they say that you can get 5,000 gens and more. That's amazing. There's also a welfare version of Honus, and also the HP cap here has increased by 20 points. 23, 20. Remember, always 10 points more than the game shows. With all that said, let's go straight into Reddit in a post by Hands43, as always doing an amazing job. Thank you so much. We have the translation from the video and comparisons to the JP counterpart of these styles. Well, Alosis got a strange buff, only to will. Yeah, for status at least, this character can take some damage, both physical and magical. His STR is good enough, and he does have some good agility and okay dexterity. And now for passives, they buffed many of them. Well, when he attacks, he buffs his STR by 20%. When he uses an attack that's direct, he also recovers 1 BP. Most of his attacks are direct. When he is attacked by direct attacks, those that usually trigger counter, he will grant himself a heat up that increases damage potential by 15% for the whole fight and stack up to 10 times. So just from this part, you get 150% increase in damage in long fights where you get directly attacked to trigger this event. That will happen more often on very long fights or in Remembrance, but not all fights though. And then when he is attacked as well, doesn't matter if it's direct or indirect, he'll buff your endurance and will by 15%. Well, this is similar to Strumnikin, but Strumnikin buffs STR, endurance, and will, so he gets stronger the more hits he gets, and his value is higher as well. He buffs 20% and not 15%. We also had other characters with similar mechanics. Remember, Robin Polka and also Robin Liz. They always buffed the offensive status. In this case, he's buffing the defensive one so that you can see that it's not going to take much damage. He can stay on a formation and be used as a tank. Then the second passive, when the turn begins, he has a 50% chance to get an attack boost that increases damage by 30%. This lasts for 3 turns, and he will also recover 2 BP. So you can say that on average he gets 1 BP per turn, and well, on average you have at least 45% damage increase with the character. Together with high protect tension, that means, well, you usually have 65 damage increase as average, and you can get as much as 215% damage increase when you stack all your hit ups. That's a lot, right? He also decreases damage by 30% because of high protect tension, usually gets 5 BP per turn so that he can use his nukes more often. And what are his attacks? The first one is a single target attack with Pierce and Blunt. It's free, just has a little more power. We will be using this every 2 turns because nuking is what you want, and you have 2 different options. Well, if you want him to get more directly attacked, you will use the skill number 2 because this one is fast and will give himself taunt. That means that he will draw more enemy attacks to warn himself. This lasts for 4 turns, and he also gets a guard up large, decreasing damage taken by 35. He can cycle this skill and then use the skill number 1 so that he always has the guard up large effect going. And then when you finally reach the 10 stacks of heat up, you can actually use a better attack, but this time it's just blunt. See that he has 3 different elementals, but it's stronger, has 4S damage, and has the same BP cost. But you can also just choose to keep using the second skill if you want, just because of the guard up, but it has lower damage. In very long fights, this damage is gonna be great. Well, you can say that he's gonna do almost double the damage of current units with 4S attacks, but it may take as much as 10 turns for him to reach that much potential or more. So it's an interesting design, but I see that this kind of being a prototype of something that may happen in the future that will trigger heat ups easier. Can still work just fine. The next character is Honus, and well, this Honus has 91% STR, but has 119 intelligence. This is made for those that already have the Honus with the Fire Shield from Meteoric 4 banner. He has a good enough agility with 94, dexterity is not that high, but it's good enough as well. He's pretty fragile with only 59 endurance, but he can fix this problem with some of his passives. First of all, critical attack will increase damage by 50% extra, so it reaches actually 70% just by doing critical attacks, 20 as base. And when he's attacked by heat attacks, all damage will be nullified. Remember, if the attack has both heat and something like slash, for example, he will negate the full damage. When a critical attack lands, he also recovers 2 BP, and will grant himself a defense up that gives him 15% reduction in damage taken for the whole fight. This stacks 5 times, so we have 5 stacks of minus 15% in damage. He will become very good defensively, even if you think about his low endurance. And, well, the shield from the past version of Honus is very useful on Remembrance. We barely have resources on Remembrance to survive against multiple enemy attacks. There's barely any healer. Well, he's a healer as well. So this will just make your support for Remembrance very good. And also for fights where the enemy uses fire attacks as their main source of damage, so that you can negate. And there's one interesting thing. You can force a critical attack now by crafting weapons with critical effects. Now, the interesting thing is that his second passive gives him critical attacks against humans and plants. So that means any of his skills will trigger critical against those types. And then critical attack damage also increases by 30%. Third passive, Great Lethal Tension. Attack increases by 30%, critical damage increases by another 30. So we have lots of damage increase passives here. Just to explain, it's 140% damage increases when landing critical attacks, but since critical already has 20% as base, it will be 160% increase. Well, that's pretty cool, huh? He has good damage when landing critical attacks, but then only critical against humans and plants. He needs his own attacks to just give more critical effects. Well, in his past version with the Fire Shield, he already has an attack that is critical against flying enemies, so you are covering at least 3 different types if you have the Inheritance. And that version has a column attack that hits twice. The damage is pretty good. It's even higher than Waterfall Blade, especially now that you can inherit into this version. He will be doing more damage than SaGa, for example, but with 2 attack animations. And he is Heat and Slash, while Waterfall Blade Plus is just Cold and Slash. Still different elements. But okay, the first skill is a heal spell that revives and also grants morale up medium, increasing damage potential by 25%. That lasts for 2 turns. So, well, up to this point we only had Ogniana as a healer for Remembrance in Axe battles. Now you have another choice. That is one will still be doing good damage while offering support. You don't need both. If you already have Ogniana, you're kinda set, but I have to say that Honus is a better option because of his contribution to damage. The second skill is a full UE attack with 5 BP and only D power. Yes, kinda old for this. And it deals heat and slash damage. And it's critical to Beast and Beastmans. Well, Beast and Beastmans are usually weak to heat. Not always, but at least the Beastmans are. That means that you'll be hitting the critical damage, and this D power attack will feel almost like an A power attack. And he can use this as much as he wants, especially if he's dealing critical damage. Remember, he gets 5 BP when doing that. That will help in Final Island and in some farming, but it's not game changing. The skill itself needed a higher power. Now the third attack is a 9 BP cost triple S attack with heat and blunt. In this case, it's critical against aquatic and fish. The good thing is that, well, fish enemies are usually weak to blunt. The same goes for aquatic. But heat does not always do much damage. It's just like, you know, casting fire underwater. It doesn't help much. So it's just an extra. Okay, with all that, we have at least Beast, Beastman, Aquatic, Fish, Human, and Plant as critical effects. Okay, but in the last story update, we can craft Lapis weapons that gives you critical effects against some enemy types. Right now, we can give Human, Male, Female, Giant, Mech, Rock, Beastman, Beast, Dragon, Reptile, Plant, and Insect. And you can also get weapons with just critical plus effect to increase this damage even further. Well, we will get another story update that will add even more enemy types, so it's interesting. He's gonna do plenty of damage. Sadly, his nuke is only triple S, should have been 4S, so that we will see very big numbers. And his second skill does not have real damage. Even with all of his damage increase passives, if you do not have his past version with the fire shield, I recommend a skip. It's not as interesting, but with that, you have a very strong column attack that can be used many times. It's even fast, and you can increase the damage output of that skills, and this one's a lot, and can give him utility on Remembrance, where he can cast a fire shield and then use a normal attack that gives him critical effect so that he recovers more BP and can even attack while putting the shield on. A very interesting thing for those that are having difficulty on Remembrance. And the last character is Forneus, and I have to say that he's the most interesting character of the bunch. They buffed his endurance and will a little so that he has at least 90% and can take both physical and magical damage. He carries 115% STR, that's good enough, and all the other status are kinda above the average, but nothing spectacular. For passives, the first one is kind of funny. Well, on the start of a round, he grants himself a heat up, that increases damage by 15%, stacks up to 10 times in battle, but it's on the start of a round. Well, when you're farming, you will get 15%, 30, 45 on turn 3, on wave 3. But in boss fights, with only one wave, you only have 15% out of this. There are events with 10 waves, but, well, those are pretty hard to say that this will matter too much. Then he also applies a defense down to all enemies on the start of the wave, decreasing their defenses by 10% for the whole fight. This is new. We have effects that last for some turns. His one is 10% for the whole fight, so it increases damage of the party too. And another effect, in turns multiplied by 3, that means 3, 6, 9, 12 and beyond, he will clear all the buffs applied to the party, and will also apply all status buff of 25%. That's insane, right? Well, Nawal's daughter usually needs 3 turns to cast her all status buff, that is also 25%. Well, she also applies a defense boost shield, she also gives 1 VP to the party, that is still amazing, and you can combo them together if you want. But it's interesting that he is just something else. Nawal's daughter barely does damage. Your Forneus will be buffing every 3 turns and giving more utility to the party, but you still need a primary buffer. You cannot use him as a primary buffer. It's just an extra thing for those fights where your will is not high enough and you need a secondary buffer besides Matriarch with her Piece, for example. Sadly, it's not on turn 1, so he does not benefit on this from farming in many scenarios, only on turn 3. Now the second one, on the end of a turn, he recovers HP by around 200, and on odd turns, that means 1, 3, 5 and beyond, recovers 2 BP. On even turns, he buffs his own STR, Endurance and Will by 15%. That's cool because on turn 2 you are buffing those 3 status, and then on turn 3 you are buffing all your status, and then again on turn 4 you are buffing again. So for Forneus himself, he's gonna get plenty of buffs and help the party get some as well. Then the last one is High Protect Tension, increasing damage potential by 20% and reducing damage taken by 30. Well, this is the only damage passive besides the heat up effect, but, well, he already gives the defense down and all status buff. You can see that it's already good enough. Going for skills, the first one is a free fully re-attack with Pierce and Lightning. Yes, and even has a chance of applying Endurance debuff. His intelligence is 91%, it's not that big. He can inherit some skills from his mage style, but they don't really matter too much here. But it's cool, free for extra effect. Then the second skill is an 8 BP single target attack with only D power, that's right, pretty weak. But it's a fast attack, then after attacking he goes into a defensive counter stance that lasts for 1 turn, and he will grant himself a shield against indirect attacks. He's not going to take damage against indirect attacks, and will counter direct attacks with Trident Fall. That's a triple S single target attack with Pierce and Cold damage, and each hit has a chance to debuff Endurance of the target by up to 15% on max level. Well, remember his monster version, he has a similar attack, but it's for full AoE. Here we have a triple S attack against single targets, and it even has double element, Pierce and Cold. So it's easier to use when you only have one enemy, and you will reach higher damage potential as well. The interesting thing here is the shield against indirect attacks, because when you bring a counter unit for a boss fight and the boss still has some indirect attacks, your counter unit may die before really applying the counter attacks. But since this has 8 PP cost and it lasts for only 1 turn, you still want to place your character in the right position, and even sometimes he start the fight to get the number of counters you want to do plenty of damage. And the last skill is a 10 VP double hit attack with 8 power, similar to double crush, but here we have pierce and cold damage, and each hit will buff STR, endurance and will by up to 25% on max level. The second hit will do a little more damage, and this is the same number of status buff that you have with a second passive on odd turns, so you can stack many buffs. But the thing is, you kinda have to choose between using the second skill or the third. The good thing is that Forneus, even when not countering, is still helping the party by buffing all status, and you can inherit the full AoE attack as counter if you want as well. So there are plenty of utility for those that have the monster version. Without the monster version, you will miss out on some of the fun, but then you still get a lot just by having the single target counter and getting the all status buff to the party. This is interesting because it comes from a passive. In the future they will release a wolf called Razan, if I remember correctly, that has a multiple status buff to the party passively, but in his case it's every turn, so it stacks to very high levels, and people even replaced Matriarch with this character on GP, but their Matriarch is inferior to ours. She still has a place in the meta moving forward, and she can combo well with that character as well as she can combo well right now with Forneus, but just know that in the future they will release characters that will outclass Forneus in this specific role as a buffer. Still, it's a pretty nice setup, and for today's standards, he's the only character that will receive a triple S grade, while the other two will receive an SS plus grade because they are a little more niche in their own design, while Forneus will work better than the others. Well, with all that said, this is my opinion. What is yours? Please see here on the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I will be seeing you soon on the next video or next live stream. Bye. And with my first impressions, I'm planning to give this a silver award. This banner is good, but I do believe that Matriarch and Rock banner and Polka family banner still gives you more utility in general. They are more useful as everyday characters, while these characters here are a little more niche, but Forneus is still pretty good.